Kids will be hurt this weekend. The wounds are self-inflicted. The weapon is drugs. Cocaine will send 8,000 to the emergency room this year. Among high school seniors, cocaine use has doubled in the last 5 years. Almost a third more kids smoke pot today than did in 1975. About 1 in 10 of all of our high school seniors smoke pot every single day. The use of PCP is slowly going down for now. Still, like this boy, every year Angel Dust sends thousands of kids into hospitals and psychiatric wards. The use of the sedative methaqualone, ludes the kids call them, has been steadily rising since 1978. The Justice Department says except for marijuana, quaaludes have become our children's favorite chemical high. Not quite as many are taking Valium today as a few years ago. Still, Valium overdoses will put almost 50,000 people in the hospital this year, more than any other single drug. Speed, it's never been more abused than it is today. The slogan that slowed it down in the 1960s was "Speed kills," and it still does. Finally, America's favorite drug, as well as the deadliest and most damaging, alcohol. More kids are drinking, and drinking more often today than any other generation in our history. Now add in heroin, LSD, pills of every color and description, and the result is an epidemic, a generation with their future imperiled. But this is the American child's favorite illegal chemical, marijuana. Today, more high school kids have tried it than haven't, and except for alcohol, more kids smoke pot every day than all other drugs combined. About 500 million ounces in little plastic bags are sold in the parks, street corners, schoolyards of America. The kids like it because it's relatively cheap at 35 bucks an ounce. In small quantities, it's practically legal. It feels good, and what's more, it's harmless. Or at least that's what the kids tell me.
It's not bad for you. Nobody ever said it's bad for you. It may give you cancer or something, but so does everything else.
They don't have any proof that pot hurts your body as it is, you know. Not that I've heard that no scientist is proving, you know, that pot hurts your body in any kind of way.
It turns out, of course, he's wrong. Seriously, dangerously wrong.
Smoking 5 or more joints daily, life revolves around pot smoking, friends, planning activities, and getting stoned.
He's not all there. Mark Broking, 30 years old, healthy, intelligent, but missing a past. Too much of the last 10 years he can't remember. From notes, he tries to piece together his life since 1970, the year he started smoking marijuana.
Starting to notice feeling different, headaches, no energy, little motivation, not quite in touch with reality. Thinking, what's the problem, that I have to be stoned all the time? Then I noticed memory not as sharp, forgetting people's names, telephone numbers, change in personality and lifestyle.
Almost 2 years ago, Mark went to see a neurologist about his headaches, confusion, his loss of memory. The doctor ordered a brain scan, a computerized look at Mark's skull from the inside as X-rays reflect off blood and bone onto a sheet of film. But the results were puzzling. There was no tumor, no blood clot, no brain shrinkage, no abnormality of any kind, so the question remained. Mark's ability to think, to remember, was getting worse, but what was the cause?
Mark represented what appeared to be, at least, a pure example of a dementia or of a loss of intellectual ability, the loss of problem-solving ability, that we could relate directly to heavy marijuana usage over a period of years. And we came to that conclusion in his case.
Would you use the word senile?
It would be comparable to a senile person, that's correct. There would be very little difference comparing his inabilities with somebody who was senile.
This is a photograph taken with an electron microscope by Dr. Robert Heath at Tulane University. It is a picture of that space between tiny neurons in the brain where chemical information is passed from one brain cell to the next. This is where our thoughts are born. In a normal brain, the space is clear, narrow, unencumbered. But in the brain of a daily pot smoker, it looks like this: black, thick, encrusted with some dark, foreign material. How does it happen? What does it mean? The doctors aren't sure yet, but it seems likely to be brain damage of some kind. And the fear is it could be permanent. It is in Mark Broking's case, whatever the cause. From 1968 to 1974, several hundred young American soldiers stationed in Western Europe were examined for the effects of marijuana on the lungs. All the soldiers smoked either marijuana or hashish, a kind of concentrated marijuana. Many complained of chronic bronchitis. The man in charge of that study was head of the U.S. Army drug program at the time, Dr. Forrest Tennant.
The most serious aspect of what we found was that we did a study in which we put a tube down their throat and took biopsies. And what we found was that these individuals had a precancerous lesion that you normally only find in cigarette smokers who have smoked a pack a day of cigarettes for 20 or 30 years. But yet we had these hashish smokers had developed these lesions within only a few months' time.
And this is what those lesions may become: cancer, just beginning to grow, a tiny gray dot on the X-ray of a man's right lung. And if they don't get treatment and don't give up smoking, some of those soldiers can look forward to this: a lung half filled with cancer, the picture of a man with 2 months to live. With millions of Americans smoking marijuana, the point, I guess, is obvious.
People will develop cancer of the lung from chronic marijuana smoking, or at least some probably will. Based on what we know about the natural history of cigarette smoking, however, we would not expect to see this until probably the latter half of the 1980s.
That we would see an awful lot of incidents of cancer?
Yes.
Her name is Lila, and what she and her cage mates can tell us about marijuana in some ways is more frightening than all that you've already heard. This is one of the primate rooms at a U.S. health science lab in Bethesda, Maryland, where Dr. Carol Smith is studying marijuana's effects on the reproduction system of one of humankind's closer relatives, the rhesus monkey. There's one in particular I'd like you to meet. Her name is Nancy, and she's stoned. Every single day she's injected with THC, the psychoactive chemical of marijuana. She gets the equivalent of 3 or 4 joints a day, and the effects are obvious. She's dazed, sleepy, defenseless. What's not so obvious is the effect of the drug inside her body. Nancy has lost her fertility. She's no longer capable of bearing children. Her 28-day menstrual cycle, identical to the human female, has all but stopped. And all that happened when she started on pot.
Our major fear has been the developing reproductive system in young teenage girls. Our fear is that there may be a permanent disruption of the developing fertility and the sexual development in young girls.
And a boy may be taking the same chance. Already there's evidence that the sperm count of a heavy marijuana smoker is decreased, that in some cases sperm are deformed and less active than they should be. For younger boys, of course, there are even more problems. The change of a child's long, thin body into the strong, muscled form of a man requires hormones during the teenage years. The hormone is testosterone, and there are some reports its levels are decreased by the heavy use of the drug. In fact, some men report breasts beginning to develop with the daily use of pot. Of course, in all of this, a good deal more research needs to be done. We haven't smoked pot all that long in this country, but it seems there are risks to both a boy and a girl, and, by the way, to the baby waiting to be born. Finally, our story comes to this: the child not yet born. If you smoke pot and you're pregnant or plan to be, you won't like the sound of this. Marijuana flows from your veins into the blood of your child. But without the size, age, and body weight, the baby can't get rid of the drug as fast as you can. And in some maternity wards, researchers are beginning to find that kids born of marijuana-smoking mothers aren't as healthy as normal children. The point of all this, in the green leaves of marijuana, there's a powerful drug full of chemicals that stay in the body and interfere with body chemistry. And while the research is just beginning, already we know It's strong enough to cause a healthy monkey to become barren, infertile. It's young to be born weak and small if the child's lucky enough to survive at all. And if a few marijuana cigarettes a day can do all that to an animal so similar to ourselves, what will it do to the fragile reproductive system growing inside a human child, a boy or a girl? And while we wait for science to give us that answer, who's willing to take the chance? And why would they want to? The Union Mission, downtown Atlanta, Georgia, downtown America. Every city has one, an overnight stop for the wayward and dispossessed. A place to sleep, something to eat, a sermon before they go back, to wander the streets broke, a bottle in their pockets, surrender in their eyes. These are the faces we imagine when we hear the word alcoholic. We don't think of them as drug addicts. About alcohol, we don't use the word drug. But every doctor and counselor I talked to said, it's time we did.
What I'm saying is to take a good look around, because we already have an epidemic of teenagers who are alcoholics. And what's going to happen is it's going to get worse. And all of a sudden, everybody's going to see what's right in front of their nose. And it's not just the major cities now. It's all over. It's epidemic. The numbers are increasing geometrically. It's phenomenal how many teenagers we're now seeing who are full-blown alcoholics.
By numbers of kids, by volume consumed, no other drug even compares to alcohol. If you look at the research, and not at what you and I would like to believe, you'll find that 90%, or almost every high school kid in America, has had a drink at one time or another. 2/3 of them are regular drinkers. Most started in grade school or junior high. 1 in 6 of our children get drunk or nearly so once a week. The number of teenage problem drinkers or alcoholics in this country was a few 100,000 a few years ago. Today, it's 3.3 million and rising. And one last statistic. Thanks to better health and better medicine, the death rate is going down for every age group in America, with one exception, where the number of dead is going up. The exception is our young. The reason is drinking and driving.
Traffic accidents is the #1 cause of death in adolescence. And the #1 cause of traffic accidents is alcohol.
If a child is going to die before he or she becomes an adult, take a good look. This most likely will be the cause of death. 3,000 pounds of high-speed iron and steel. The automobile, it's killing kids like never before. Every year, more kids die in a car crash than any other cause. Forget drownings, war, disease, other accidents. The steel in a car cuts the life out of more of our young than all other causes combined. Every 5 seconds, a teenager has a traffic accident in this country, and in 12,000 of them, at least one person ends up dead, either the kid or an innocent victim who just happened to get in the way. Like Charles Philip DeBosey, a laughing 3-year-old boy who will never reach 4. He's dead. Castlewood Road, Fayette County, Georgia, 5 minutes after 6 on a summer day. Chuck DeBosey is driving a Honda Civic. His wife is next to him. The little boy, his baby sister, Kathy Jean, are sitting in the back seat. Over their shoulder had they looked, a pickup truck coming right at them, going twice their speed. The driver, Terry Hales, 18 years old. His blood alcohol level tested 2 hours later, .11. Legally drunk, according to the police. The truck smashes into the back of the Honda. The 2 children are thrown out in an instant. The little boy is dead. And the teenager, now charged with first-degree homicide with a vehicle, that night in the arms of a police officer, he cried and said over and over again, "I've killed a little boy." Today, his lawyer says Terry wishes he had been the one to die. Those are his words. The parents have only one. Why? And if for an entire society drinking too much can do that much harm, think of the damage to kids, young, not yet mature, still developing. For the drug alcohol, for any drug, that's the greatest harm. The time, energy, and learning lost to drugs in the child's critical growing up years. About drinking and drugs, every doctor I talked to feared it the most. Arrested development, they call it, a simple idea. How can a child learn and fully develop if he's drunk? How can he grow to be healthy and strong if he's high?
I spaced out on everything. I I got to the point where I didn't give a damn about my family. You know, my mom, she could go jump in a lake for all I cared. You know, all I cared about was the drugs.
It gave me an I don't care attitude. You know, I started not getting along with my parents and, you know, not caring about anybody else but myself. So I think that, you know, in that aspect, it hurt me a lot.
You and me been fighting each other for so long, and the feeling that I feel for you is more than strong, girl. Take it from me.
His name is Bobby. I can't tell you his last name. I can't show you his face. He's only 16 years old, and he's crazy. The doctors call it drug-induced psychosis, which is another way of saying he's irrational, insane, and will stay that way until the drugs clear his body and his mental wounds can heal. He took the drug 3 weeks before I met him, and I asked him what he's been feeling since then, what the last 3 weeks have been like.
Space, a final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. A 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life, new civilizations.
Let me just talk to you for a second.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
What did you take? Was it speed?
Yeah, that's what it was, speed.
Black Beauties?
Yeah, speed.
Did you take too much?
Overdose.
This is Camarillo State Hospital, Ventura County, California, the temporary home for 1,400 patients, some of them developmentally disabled, the rest, like Bobby, are mentally ill. Bobby was brought to the psychotic ward for adolescents here after he was found one day wandering the grounds of his high school, not knowing where he was or who. And 3 weeks after his overdose, he's still not sure.
I'm Superman. Superman!
Easy now, easy. Why don't you sit down for a second? Easy now, easy. I don't want you to get hurt. Come on, step down here. Bobby may have thought he was taking speed, but the staff here says most likely the drug was PCP, phencyclidine, angel dust, a white powder easy to make and sold under a half-dozen different names. And at the University of Colorado in Denver, Dr. Robert Friedman is studying the effects of the drug on a single nerve cell in the brain of a rat in order to better understand what happened to Bobby and all the kids just like him.
We think what happens with a kid who takes PCP is that there's a large release of chemicals like adrenaline inside his brain, and it changes in a very profound way the nature of the brain. The brain suddenly becomes very excited and very hypersensitive to all the stimuli that are in the environment, and so that the kid loses his ability to focus his attention. Instead, he's literally flooded or bombarded by stimuli. When that happens, he literally loses his mind.
The point, again, if you add powerful chemicals to the already fragile chemical balance of your brain, you take a chance, and sometimes you lose.
And the feeling that I feel for you is more than strong, girl. Take it from me. I need my mom and dad.
Escape. More than anything else, I think that's what this story is about. In their own way, with their own words, almost every kid I talked to said drugs are cheap, easy to get almost anywhere, and as such have become the best way to escape the hard times of adolescence, the crisis years, the most self-conscious time of your life.
I think I escaped through drugs. I just didn't want to deal with my feelings. I didn't know that at the time. But now, I think I'm, emotionally, I missed out on a lot. I just didn't want to hurt any, and I wasn't willing to hurt, so I just did drugs.
It was like it took pressure. There's pressure on your shoulders, and when you took a toke, it started letting out. When you were stoned, it was gone.
About drug abuse, we need to understand this. There is no pressure on a child, not from parents, teachers, cops, counselors, media, nothing that compares to peer pressure, the power that kids have over each other. At a party of good friends where everybody is smoking and drinking, feeling high, having a good time, to turn down that drink, to say no to a line of cocaine, refuse to smoke a joint with your classmates, your friends, it's hard. Especially when you desperately want to be accepted, you're a little insecure, and you're only 15. The pressure is overwhelming. It's strong enough so that every year tens of thousands of kids impress their friends by drinking and driving and then get arrested for DUI, driving under the influence. Thousands more boastfully take more than they can handle and end up unconscious or dead. Still more are arrested for the sale of drugs or possession, and at best are put on probation, at worst are put behind bars. That's part of the pressure on kids to use drugs, but that's not all. There's another pressure on America's kids, an influence sometimes subtle, other times bold, about the value of drinking and drugs. It comes from the music they hear. A good many kids spend as much time listening to rock music as they do their teachers in school, and sometimes that dark plastic hides a seductive tune about being drunk or getting stoned. From a handful of rock groups, here's a sample of what I mean.
Scott, turn up Maine, looking for that girl who sells cocaine. Cocaine, spread all around my brain. Hey, that's all that blood drain alcohol. There ain't no cause for alarm. We ain't out to do nobody no harm. How can anyone be so unkind to arrest a man for driving while blind? If you've got bad news, you wanna kick the blues, cocaine. When your day is done and you wanna run, cocaine.
But we're just beginning to understand that the greatest influence on the mind of a child may well be America's favorite babysitter, time killer, and most popular pastime, television. The average kid watches 20,000 hours of Bugs Bunny, Three's Company, Mork and Mindy by the time he graduates from high school. That's twice the number of hours he spends in the classroom, most of it during prime time. During those years, by the way, he sees 360,000 television commercials, all of them sending a message.
Life got tougher and we got stronger. This is Extra Strength Excedrin.
Today, there's a better aspirin, Ecotrin.
With the most sinus headache pain reliever per dose.
Alka-Seltzer Plus cold medicine, fast relief for the Denver cold. Restores free breathing in as fast as 15 seconds. Only the strongest, most effective appetite suppressant available without prescription.
I used to be afraid, too. Take 3.
There's no reason to feel bad, even for a few seconds. That seems to be the message, and kids hear it from the day they're born. Pain is unacceptable. Headache, hemorrhoids, asthma, anxiety, upset stomach, insomnia, whatever ails you, there's a capsule, a liquid, a drug of some kind to cure you, and you'll find it on TV. Feeling better has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Between over-the-counter drugs and prescription medicine, Americans spent $11 billion last year, twice as much as they did 10 years ago, 10 times what we spent 30 years ago. That's up over 1,000% in 30 years. But don't misunderstand me. For people sick and in pain, oftentimes these drugs are a godsend, a modern chemical miracle to defend against suffering and disease. It's just that with so many adults in this country solving their physical, emotional problems with billions of pills, with both drugs and alcohol, what does that tell our children? Let's talk about the kids in the media one more time. There's another drug for sale on television, and in a 12-ounce can, there are 11 ounces of good food, friendship, conversation, the great outdoors, good-looking women, good-looking men, sunsets, adventures, a whole lot of fun.
Think of beer.
And old Milwaukee tastes as great as its name.
But what they don't tell you, and they don't tell the kids, is that beer's not quite a soft drink. That last ounce is pure ethyl alcohol.
That's what's so ridiculous, that 3/4 of an ounce of whiskey, 2 to 3 ounces of wine, depending on the wine, or 8 ounces of beer contain the exact same amount of alcohol. So the kid who says, oh, listen, all I do is drink beer, what he's doing is going to the bathroom a lot to get rid of that excess liquid, but he's just as alcoholic as the one who's popping a shot of whiskey. There's no difference. One's diluted more. But what's the difference?
Hollywood is also notorious for portraying alcoholics as wonderful, witty, innocent drunks, good, healthy role models for our kids. In the hit movie Arthur, for example, our hero never gets mean, obnoxious, or angry, never gets hurt despite driving while blind drunk, and always wakes up with a smile instead of a screaming hangover. He drinks constantly, day and night, but somehow he's always in a clever, funny mood.
Want a drink?
I never drink.
Ah.
No one in my family ever drinks.
That's great. You probably never run out of ice your whole life. Huh? That's just a little humor.
The point is, kids see one thing, but are told another.
My parents wanted to see a good little girl, a girl who made straight A's in school, you know, had the little slumber parties and the Barbie dolls and all that routine. That was their idea of a good little girl, and they would do anything to believe that. They would ignore bruises on me, cuts on me, staggering around the house, running into walls, in order to see a good little girl. It was easier that way.
The parents will, almost on an unconscious level many times, convince themselves that what's really happening isn't happening, and they'll back off. They'll find a roach clip. They'll find rolling papers. They'll find even a joint, or they'll find some pills lying around. And they'll believe the wildest stories. You know, I'm holding him for a friend, or, you know, I don't know how they got in my pants pocket, because they don't want to believe and they don't want to hear, and they also don't want that kind of a fight.
I don't know how many parents will call me up and say, my kid isn't on marijuana, he's not a drug addict anymore. And I've said, how did you get him off the marijuana? Oh, I offer to buy him all the whiskey he needs.
On the one hand, we tell them that pot, booze, mind-altering drugs are dangerous, destructive, against the law. And then we turn right around and drink millions of gallons of alcohol, a new record every year. We sell it on television as though it were some magic elixir that produces instant happiness and friendship. And what's more, anytime, day or night, if you hurt, if you feel bad, and who doesn't as an adolescent, there's an extra strength chemical out there, any one of thousands, that'll instantly cure you. The point is, kids learn what we teach them. And in the end, it's not the American teenager who has the drug problem. It's America.